Today, we're going to be talking about the 8-passenger situation again. There's been 2 updates as well as one huge update with Jessi Hildebrandt coming forward, who is Jodi Hildebrandt's niece. And they talk about their experience with Jodi. Throughout this video, I will be referring to Jessi as they, them. So when you hear me say that, I am referring to Jessi. That's what their pronouns are, and I want to be respectful as I can be. But before we jump into that, let's talk about the possibility of Ruby Frank getting a pretrial release. A district court in Utah recommended the release of Ruby Frank, known for 8 Passengers YouTube channel, who was charged for 6 counts of second-degree felony CA pending trial. A public safety assessment report suggested Frankie's release before trial with restrictions, including monthly check-ins by phone. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because that would not be good, and we'll just have to wait and see. And there's been a small update with Kevin Frankie's attorney coming forward and saying a few things. The attorney for Kevin Frankie, husband of YouTube vlogger Ruby Frankie, has publicly stated his client was not present or aware of the alleged child abuse Ruby has been charged with. Randy Kester made an appearance on News Nation on Wednesday, September 6th. He stated that his client was not aware or present in the George home where the alleged abuse took place. He pointed out the children were in custody of their mother for the summer, and she had taken them to Utah County without Kevin Frankie's knowledge. And that's what's being said on the husband's side. We'll just have to wait for more to come forward before we have a bigger picture on what exactly is going on there. Here on this Mormon Stories podcast, Jessi Hildebrandt comes forward and talks about their experience being the niece of Jodi Hildebrandt. And this is a 3-hour-long podcast, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but I am going to go over some points that I think were interesting and honestly hard to listen to. So trigger warning, this is going to be a really sensitive subject. Just to let you know, it can be disturbing. This video will be talking a lot about abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and spiritual abuse.
And with like my family, they believe that if I were to speak out, it would be a violation of their privacy. However, when someone abuses you, those people lose the right to their privacy, because now it's mine. Now it's my story. Now it's your story. And you have every right. I have every right to talk about it. And it has to be, and I think it has to be talked about for any sort of healing, individually or collectively. We have to talk about these types of things.
I can't even imagine exactly what she's went through, because the things she talks about here it's just out of my reality. But I can feel her pain. I can see her pain, and it is very difficult to watch this. But I'm very, very proud of her for coming forward with this courage and speaking out about it, because it not only, is going to help her, but it's also going to help a lot of other people out there that might be dealing with something like this, and help them speak out about it too. And during the podcast, the interviewer John asked Jessi if Jodi is gay, because if you don't know, there has been some videos going around online where it does look like, Jodi and Ruby possibly could have had a relationship. It's complete speculation.
I've thought that since I was a kid.
That what?
That potentially she was queer,
Okay.
and I am queer, so I'm for it. I think it's great. It's real great. Waters are warm.
And this is interesting because of how much Jodi has talked about how bad it is to be gay, how it is shameful and it's sinful.
And I have no idea. She did say something to me when I was living with her that was very strange, because I've known I was queer since I was like 7, and it was like experimenting with girls and friends since I was 7 or 8, and she knew about that, and it was very bad. It was very evil. But then she said something to me. She had this friend, her name's Bev. She said something to the effect of, yes, being gay is evil and pleasures of the flesh and yada, yada. But if I were to have sexual relationships with my friends, if we were to like, it would be different because there's a deep emotional connection there, and that's different. And like we were sitting in someone's living room and she said this, and I was just like, what? Yeah, that's called being gay. Like, what do you think gay relationships are like? They are emotional and deep and connective. And
so there it is. That's what Jessi said, and interpret that the way you want. So Jessi's parents were feeling like they were having trouble raising Jessi and disciplining her. And when they were staying at Jodi's house, they were there for a 50th anniversary, their marriage anniversary, I believe. And Jodi convinced them to let Jessi stay and that she would handle it. And that's when the nightmare began.
I go downstairs. I get into a fight with mom. I go downstairs, lock myself in the basement with her phone because she had taken my phone away. So I took my mom's phone because I wanted to text my boyfriend. And I don't really know what the conversation was that was had. This is hours later. It's 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, maybe even later. All I know is that Jodi and my parents had a conversation. Jodi told them to leave me with them, me to leave me with her, and for them to just go and to not say anything and to just pack up the things and just go. And so a few hours later, I get a knock on the door. I was asleep, and it was Jodi and my grandparents telling me that my family had left and I wasn't going with them, and that my life was about to change pretty dramatically.
From there, Jessi goes on to explain how anything that gave her worth was taken away from her. She wasn't allowed to go to school anymore. She did homeschooling for a little bit, and even that was taken away just because it gave her worth.
So anything that gave me a sense of worth, I was not allowed to have anymore. I had really long hair that I loved. Had to cut it all off because it gave me a sense of worth. Going to school gave me a sense of worth. Not allowed to do it. I was homeschooled for, I think, about half a semester until I was not allowed to go to school at all. And I was very good at school and I really liked school. But again, anything that gave me a sense of value or a sense of worth, I wasn't allowed to do because it was ego and it was bad and it was distraction from the darkness that was inside me.
Jodi would manipulate Jessi into making them believe they were evil and manipulative, a master manipulator. And according to Jessi believed that Jodi 100% believed that Jesus, God, was working through her, and that she was basically a spiritual warrior fighting off Satan every single day.
The thing that Jodi is so good at is that she is so good at seeing her victims, using what's there already. So she saw me as an angry teenager. And so she's like, I could use this, oh, you're angry because you're evil. You're sad because you have so much sin inside of you. Oh, you've kissed girls. Oh my God, you are just Satan himself. And I don't say this hyperbolically. Like, she genuinely literally believed that Satan was working through me. And
your mom,
my aunt.
Oh, Jodi, okay.
And she literally believed that Jesus was working through her, and that she was fighting Satan on a daily basis, not just with me, but also with her clients. The reason why these people thought anything was wrong, according to her, was because I was emotionally manipulating them into thinking that. I would go to church and wear a long face and manipulate them into feeling sorry for me, which was a very common theme about through the entire process of living with Jodi. Was if someone liked me, if someone felt sorry for me, it was all because of manipulation. And I was a masterful manipulator. Constantly, I was told this, constantly, to the point where, I believed it. I was like, you're right. I must be this horrific. And I was already believing I was evil because I was gay. And so she plays into things that are already there. She finds the hot point and then drills into it. And she does this. I almost guarantee anyone that comes forward with a story about Jodi, this is what she did.
Then Jessi goes on to say that Jodi would have visions and dreams of just totally made up stuff that never happened, but she said that God came to her and told her these things, so it was true. It doesn't matter what Jessi thinks.
She was convinced of so many insane beliefs, like, and she would, I know I mentioned this on like text, she would rationalize and validate these types of behaviors through dreams and visions. She would have these dreams that like, God came to her and told her that I had had an abortion. And so no matter what I said, I was a liar. And then and also she was convinced that every word that came out of my mouth was a lie. And that, gave her rationale to put duct tape on my mouth.
So by Jodi having these crazy visions, these crazy beliefs, it gave herself permission to do these insane abusive things to Jessi.
And like, I wasn't allowed to speak to my parents. I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone alone. And then then like with the duct taping, I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone. So if I was at church and I wasn't duct taped and a church leader came in, because this happened, a church leader would come and be like, "Are you okay?" And I would have to just stare at them.
Wow, I can't imagine being in a situation like that where you're just so terrified, and you also, you believe everything you're being told. You believe all these things that somebody is telling you, and you have no control. It's just, you're just there in that reality, and that's your reality now. And what's even scarier is that Jodi had spies too. So even if Jessi wanted to say something, they wouldn't have been able to.
Because she also had spies. She had people reporting back to her anything and everything that I did. So if I did talk to someone, she found out somehow. Like, the amount of paranoia and fear that I had, where I was like, I can't talk to anyone. And also people saw me duct taped. People saw that these things were going on. And other than like the few people that like went to Bishop and being like, "Hey, something's wrong," no one did anything.
Wow, honestly, I'm at a loss of words for this situation. I can't imagine what it would feel like to go into an area where you feel like people, should be there to help you, and they're not. They can't, or they don't believe you. And just having to abide by someone else's beliefs. They're your beliefs now, and everything that you say is wrong, and you just got to listen and shut up. Like, that is a literal nightmare.
But things progressively got worse because Jodi's belief and her therapeutic modalities are, which is just crazy to say, she believed that if you are angry or depressed or anxious or any like mental health, it's a result of shame. And shame is a result of sin. And so mental health is a result of sin.
Wow. So basically, Jessi wasn't allowed to be a human. I can't imagine not being able to like feel my emotions, work through my emotions, talk about my emotions, express them, have somebody there that's caring and wanting to figure out, why I'm hurt, or, why are they hurt? What's going on? No, if I felt anything that was the negative feeling, it was a sin. What?
Like I would, because I had undiagnosed ADHD, I like even sitting here, I'm like, I constantly moving and tapping my foot, or that she would talk about, okay, if you're tapping your foot, it's because your body is full of so much shame. There's nowhere else for it to go. So it comes out in these sort of like tics. She talked about OCD and how OCD was a result of shame, and that your body is so full and your spirit are so full of shame that it has nowhere else to go. So it overflows into these neuroses.
If you did anything that Jodi didn't like, it was a sin, because it seems like if you were part of Jodi's world, she was the god. And since Jessi wasn't progressing in the way that Jodi envisioned, things got worse for Jessi.
And so what she did is, because I wasn't getting better, I was getting worse. is that there was still sin in me that wasn't coming out.
And Jodi would take Jessi to work and make them stay in a room, locked in a room, and they were not allowed to leave that room. And while they were in that room, they had to confess their sins. They had to write out on a piece of paper all that they've done wrong. And whenever Jessi couldn't think of anything else, they had to make up stuff.
But I was not allowed to leave. That was like rule number one. I was not allowed to leave that room. And she would have me write out my sins on a piece of paper. And every day she gave me the same piece of paper. And I would have to write out my sins. And these sins that I was writing out, I was like, and again, I believed all this. I believed this fully. So I was like, oh, there must be more in me. I'm trying to think. I'd be like, oh, one time I lied to my best friend, Scotty. And like, these are the types of things I'm writing out. And then she would come back in, take that paper, read it to me, make me get on my hands and knees and beg for forgiveness as she read this back to me. And then she was like, no, this isn't it. This is not it. This isn't all. There's more. There's more. There's more. And there wasn't. And I would start making things up because I was like, I don't know. And because she was convinced there was more, things got worse and worse and worse.
Even though Jodi believes that she is doing good, she is literally torturing and ruining people's lives. And it's crazy. It's hard for me to believe that Jodi thinks she's doing good. It's very hard for me to believe that. There were circumstances when Jessi was forced to run sprints for hours on end in the snow, in the freezing snow, as well as being tied up, duct taped, and punched.
The day after I ran away the first time, so my aunt was making me run, she'd make me run sprints every night. And again, for the reason of making me so physically uncomfortable that I would confess to sins. And she'd have me do it for hours and hours. And outside in the winter, in the snow. And this one time in particular, I said no. And that was the day that I like walked away. I was like, no. And I turned around and she punched me in the back and knocked me down. And Jodi she's not tall, but she is sturdy. She is a powerful, like a powerhouse of a woman. Very strong. The next morning though, after I ran away, she pulled me out of bed by my hair, blindfolded me, tied my wrists, tied my legs, put me in the car, and just started driving. And I think we stopped at what I'm assuming at a gas station. And at the gas station, she screamed at me to lay on the ground because I was manipulating people. If people could see me, I was manipulating them into thinking something was wrong. So I laid on the ground of her car and she drove for what felt like hours into the mountains. And my other grandparents, not my dad's parents, but my mom's parents, parked, I found this out afterwards, were parked at the base of the mountain to make sure I didn't run away. And she had me run up and down for 6 hours, up and down and up and down. And
there was even a time when Jodi made Jessi sleep outside in a low quality sleeping bag, a very bad sleeping bag. And then Jodi would tell Jessi's parents that they were sleeping in a high quality sleeping bag, not to worry, which this was totally bullcrap.
And the other part about this type of abuse that I don't think is talked about as much is that 90% of the time you're evil and horrible and wrong, and the abuse is almost unbearable. But then there are moments where you're rewarded and you are now the best thing in the world. And so after these 6 hours of running up and down, the reward that Jodi gave me of acceptance of like, you did it. You did the thing. It creates this cycle of, which I think is already the foundation and the prerequisites of this is already instilled in the Mormon Church of having to earn love. But that has affected my life forever, for the rest of my life. Of if I try a little harder, if I do a little bit more, maybe they'll love me, maybe they'll accept me, maybe they'll whatever. In this case, it was really extreme, where the abuse was so extreme. But then if you would bear it, then you would get these moments of immense reward from her. And it's just such a psychological fuckery.
Jessi was abused emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. All of what happened to Jessi is very shocking and disturbing, to say the least. I can't imagine what that must feel like for they, and I am, like I said at the beginning of this video, I am very proud of they for coming forward and talking about this. This is something that is not easy and takes a lot of courage and strength to do. Now, there is so much more to this, and remember that I am going to have the link down in the description if you guys want to watch the whole thing through, which I suggest you should do, because it is very important for their story to be heard. There's a lot of things I didn't include here, such as Jodi being the mastermind, not Ruby, but Ruby put her in the spotlight. The Mormon Church gave Jodi her power, and Jessi believing that Jodi is a full-on psychopath. So please go give that a watch. Check it out. Go like it. Leave a comment. Show them some love. Show they some love. And I'll see you guys in the next video. If you haven't commented on this video, make sure you comment down below. Let me know what you think about this situation. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.